Hello everyone, hello, and welcome to our second webinar for the online BSc in Business Management. I will give it just a few seconds for people to join before I get started. So hopefully you've all been able to join okay, and welcome, as I say, to our second webinar for the online BSc in Business Management. It's great to have you with us today, where we're going to think a little bit about preparing for studying online. And we're going to talk about some of the tools available to help you support you during your studies, some of the skills that you might need to adopt to succeed in an online learning environment, and some tips for success on the programme. So today we have myself as programme chair. I'm Dr. Katriona Myhill. I will be discussing some of the links between study skills and employability skills at the end of our session today. And I'm also delighted to welcome Rachel Whittington is with us today. Is one of our effective learning advisors, and she's going to tell us a bit more about the resources and the library resources that are available to support your studies, and also some of the core skills that are going to help ensure success as you move through the BSc in Business Management programme. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Rachel, who's going to tell us a bit more about those resources and the library services available.
Hi everybody, thank you Katie for the introduction. My name is Rachel Whittington. I am an effective learning advisor, which means I help with all kinds of study and academic skills. As you can see, there's a different name on this slide. That's Marion Kennedy, who is the liaison librarian or academic support and liaison librarian for the School of Social Sciences. And she was going to talk about library services, but unfortunately she's unavailable. So I've agreed to cover and talk about what is available in the library, because we are on the same team. So like I say, I help with all kinds of study and academic skills. Marion, as the librarian, she helps with, finding information and research for your assignments, but also kind of citing and referencing and using other sources, resources to help as well. If that doesn't mean anything to you at the moment, don't worry, because we're going to go through and hopefully, like I say, explain why, like I say, the library is important to use and what resources you can access even, outside of the main library building. Like I say, we do get some people saying, why should I bother with the library? There's so much available online anyway. There's so much information. What Marion does as a librarian is she helps kind of filter through all of that information to make sure you're accessing the most useful and relevant stuff for your course, for your coursework, and for your general interest and research as well. There is actually research as well that's shown that students who do engage with the library resources and do kind of take advantage of what's on offer do tend to get better grades as well. Like I say, the other thing that the library provides is support around this concept of academic integrity. So academic integrity is one of the core kind of principles of doing anything within higher education, and it is kind of fundamentally about honesty. So about all work that is produced is you're making sure that all work that you produce is your own. You've come to your own conclusions about stuff. You have written it yourself, and any kind of acknowledgement to kind of anything you've used to help and support you as well. It's also about making sure that you represent what others have said or what others have done accurately, as well as what you've done accurately as well. So we've got a lot of resources and a lot of support to help with this though as well. So the library itself, the resources, you've got, hundreds of thousands of ebooks, hundreds of thousands of journals, millions of journal articles, a lot of specialist databases and stuff available as well. A lot of it is accessible through our kind of single search platform, which we call Discovery. And I am going to put a link to that in the chat there. But if you were to just Google Heriot-Watt Discovery, you should get a link to that database, a link to that platform. Not everything is available on Discovery, though. We also have a lot of specialist databases that Discovery doesn't search. And so I'm also going to put a link in the chat to our list of guides that we have. So each school, each department has its own subject guide, which has more details about, like I say, the specialist databases and stuff that you can access as well as a link to directly either book an appointment with Marion or email her with any questions as well. All the resources that we have available electronically are available, 24/7. And like I say, a number of these are things that we do actually subscribe to as well. So they're not just freely available on the internet. We've put in some evaluation into deciding what resources we make available. So a lot of these might be industry specific, and you will need your university kind of ID to be able to log in and access these. So just your Heriot-Watt username and password. So like I say, I've mentioned, I've put the links in the chat, but like I say, if you log into the student portal, just portal.hw.ac.uk, you will also find the resources under academic support. I think it's academic support, the tile is called. And you've got, and there's also a library tile on there as well. Well, you'll find what's called library search, which is discovery, and the subject guides linked to there as well.
And just to jump in there as well, Rachel, for any students that are wondering what the portal is, don't worry. Once you register for the degree programme, links to the library resources will be provided in the programme hub, which will be your home for all things online learning. So don't worry about any concerns navigating that or any difficulties logging in at the moment. Once you're registered, that will all become available for you and will all be listed in a one-stop shop in your programme hub for the BSc. Thank you, Rachel.
No worries. So, and that's it as well. And we don't just, like I say, provide these links or tell you where to find them and send you off. Like I say, a lot of what Marion does is provide that help and support with using the resources. There is a quote that I quite like about, like I say, finding information, searching for information. And that is like, trying to find information on the internet is like trying to take a drink from a fire hydrant, because, there is so much there. And that's why, the role of librarian is so important and still exists. It's to help you kind of filter that down so it does become a bit more kind of manageable. As well as, like I say, just access to these resources, we also provide a lot of online guides to the resources that we have. There's online classes and workshops that we offer, which you can sign up to as well. There's courses that you can take, in your own time, like just these little micro courses. Currently, we've got digital literacy ones, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail later on. But of course, you've always got the option for one-to-one appointments, like I say, directly with Marion. And she's available by email or by Teams as well. So, you can send her an email with a question or send her a message on Teams as well. And if we're able to, if she's able to help by email, then she will do so. So these online guides and the online classes and workshops, it's all part of what we call the Skills Hub. And again, that's available through the student portal when you get access to it. And like I say, there's a lot of stuff we're talking about here, and as you say, that might not be familiar or mean much to you and stuff until you actually get your login details. The most important thing to remember is Marion's name and Marion's email, because she will, like I say, be able to guide you through it and remind you of this as well. But there's a whole section on literature searching and using the library resources. So there's lots of videos and text guides and stuff on there, step by step, kind of just tips and tricks for how to use the resources. And there's also a bit on citing and referencing that I mentioned, and I'll talk a bit more about later on as well. As well as, like I say, the library resources on this Skills Hub guide, you've also got other sections on study and academic skills. So things like time management, which is a big one in there, and also assignments and exams. So sections on, how to do specific bits of coursework, like how to write an essay, how to do a presentation, things like that. As well as a fourth section, which is focusing on IT skills, so certain software like Word, Excel. We've got a lot of online guidance and stuff for that as well. And like I say, the library specific resource classes we might offer, you might see titles like finding sources for assignments, citing and referencing, and also, like I say, managing sources with EndNote software. EndNote, if you're not familiar, is a reference management system, which is just a software you can get on your own device, where you can save all the details of all these articles that you might be reading and looking at, all these book chapters, put your notes in there as well, and then use it when you're actually writing your work. It's very useful software that I highly recommend getting familiar with. And again, Marion can help with that. And as you say, we get quite a lot of very positive feedback about these classes as well, with a lot of people recommending them to others as well. So when we've got the schedule up, do, like I say, have a look at that.
And I think they're a great resource as well, if it's something, perhaps you've not studied for a long time, or you're coming back to higher education after a break, and some of these things you might feel a bit rusty on. And it's great to see the range of support available, not just in regards to the resources and the access to all these different articles and information that you wouldn't normally be able to access just via Google, but to also have these additional support classes that can help you brush up on some of those skills that you may not feel as confident in. And spending a bit of time, reintroducing yourself to things like searching for literature, or as Rachel talks about, how to use EndNote. These things can save you a lot of time as you move through your degree program. And so it's great to be able to hear about those up front as well.
Thank you. Yes. And I mentioned the digital literacies micro courses. These are just very short, they're designed to take about an hour and a half to complete each one. And there's one on information literacy, which focuses on, like I say, managing, finding information online, evaluating them, and then being able to cite them and refer to them in academic work later on. But we've also got, a course on generative AI, digital identity and wellbeing, and cybersecurity up as well. And we've got a couple more coming. So there's a critical thinking course that's just in its final stages before being published as well. So keep an eye out for those as well. And they're really useful just to, like I say, familiarize yourself with things, brush up on your skills as well. And as I say, Marion is always available, certainly for online appointments, but also, like I say, if you are in Edinburgh or kind of nearby and you find yourself on campus at any point, then she is available in person as well in the library. So, key things to remember, like I say, that when you find that student portal, when you get access to it, spend some time exploring it, have a look, see what's there in the library tile, see what's there in the academic development tile, as well as the others as well, and just get used to, like I say, what's, the support and what you can access there. As you do your work, as you go through your studies, do take advantage of everything that the library has to offer. The resources, but also, like I say, the skills subclasses, the guides, etc. And do get to know Marion. Like I say, she will be more than happy to help you if she can. And like I say, she's very good. So the sooner you get used to this, the sooner you explore, kind of the easier it'll be for you going forward. So that was just a very brief, like I say, introduction to what is available in the library. And like I say, in the chat there, I did put a link to the subject guides and a link to Discovery. Would anybody like me to clarify anything or say anything about else about the library before we move on to talking about more of my side, the effective learning side?
Everyone, please feel free to pop any questions you do have in the chat. We will let Rachel, I think, move on with the skills for online learning. We'll try and field all those questions at the end, but any urgent or pressing questions, do pop them in the chat. And we will also follow up on anything we don't get to in today's webinar via email. So don't worry if we don't get round to any questions asked. Thank you very much, Rachel.
No problem. So, like I say, Marion helps with, like I say, finding information, specifically citing and referencing, and also, like I say, using kind of software like EndNote and other resources. Whereas I help with all the other kind of study and academic skills. So my role is very much helping with, like I say, it might be academic writing, it might be managing your time, it might be like I say, developing, those presentation skills or something that you might want to work on, whether for your course, for something that you have to do, but also, for, you might just be interested in developing that. So we're going to talk about kind of what skills you need to be an effective student. But first of all, I want to ask you, like I say, what skills do you think you need to be an effective student? You should see a QR code there where you can scan the QR code, and it should bring you to the page to be able to enter your answers, or you can go straight to wooclap.com and enter the code to add your responses there. I'll give you a couple of minutes just to put in anything you can think of. Because it can come to this, where I say there's a lot of stuff that you might already know or be familiar with, but this is also a really great chance to explore maybe other ways of working and doing things as well. That's great. We've got quite a few responses coming through. So I'll just give you another minute, just add anything else in that you can think of. Okay. So if you're still adding things, please do, but I'm just going to start pulling out a couple of these and start talking about them. So absolutely, if someone's mentioned straight off, like I say, writing, like I say, there's a certain way as a student you need to be able to write and communicate. So your work that you submit that will then be marked by your lecturers, they're not just marking you on your knowledge, they're marking you on your ability to communicate that knowledge, whether that is, through the form of an essay or a report. So knowing kind of the writing, the academic writing kind of conventions, that's what we might say, is really important. Reading as well as mentioned that, absolutely. Like I say, you may find that there is a lot of resources that you end up working through. Some of that might be in the form of videos, but you may also find you've got a lot of, book chapters, journal articles and stuff that you get recommended. And then also as a student, you are expected to kind of read beyond and go further. And there are a few different ways that you can manage that reading though as well. So a lot of people, whether, like I say, they're brand new to study or they've been doing it for a while, may see a reading list and feel overwhelmed by the amounts that's listed on there. But there are a lot of ways and a lot of things to do to kind of manage that workload as well and kind of make it easier. There's a lot of strategies that you can use. Mentioned problem solving in here as well, communication, being able to, deal with exams and stuff as well. Memorizing effectively, time management's in there. Yep, absolutely. Research using computers, adaptability, patience in there as well, absolutely. And like I say, not just patience with other things, but patience with yourself as well. When I was taking driving lessons, I remember remarking to my driving instructor, I was like, oh, I'm such a bad driver. And he said, no, you're a learner driver. You're learning how to do it. So you need to learn that as well with yourself as you're doing these things. You might not get it straight away, and that's fine because you're learning. Be patient with yourself. I've got a lot of things as well, like thinking. Yep, absolutely. The way of learning to think about not just the work, but again, as well, about the way that you work as well. You may find that as part of your coursework and stuff, you may have to also provide, reflective writing pieces. And it's a really good practice is to be able to think not just about the course material, but think about the way you interact with it and the way that you work. Keep reflecting on it and thinking, how well is this going? Is there anything else I could be trying or could be doing? So I've got a few slides that I'm going to talk about, and we're going to touch on these kind of points as well that you've all mentioned as well. So like I say, one of the big things, particularly when you're first starting out as a student, is learning, time management or self-management. I use the term time management a lot, but I don't like it very much because, like I say, time, you can't make more of it or lose some of it. It's more about managing yourself within that time, managing your attention, deciding, what is important for you. This image on the screen is an example from a different website just about, of a type of planning method that we call calendar blocking. And it's something that's really useful. And I highly recommend that you at least do this just to see where your time does go. You can use it to just record what you do and how you actually end up spending your time. Or use it to plan, what you're going to do and when. You can make plans that are long term, where you put in maybe an online calendar or something, or whatever kind of tool you use, when all your lectures are going to be, when all your deadlines are going to be, and then you can make a plan for the whole, semester or time up until those deadlines about what piece of work you're going to get done when. Or you can do it week by week, just, on a Sunday, make a plan for your week. Or do it take it day by day. The best plan that you make is one that you will stick to, and different types of plan work for different people. You will need to be flexible, and that's what I say, that adaptability that somebody mentioned in the responses earlier. You will need to be flexible with how you spend your time because life happens, things can get in the way. So make sure you've got plenty of contingency as you're kind of planning what you're going to do and when. Definitely keep a record of those deadlines and stuff that you've got though, and kind of count back, how much time do you have for each assignment. or for each, task or thing that you've got to do. If you've got a deadline for when it has to be done, how much time do you actually have to do it? And that's where using something like this calendar blocking helps, because you can put in, well, I've got to eat at this time, I have to travel at this time, I've got work at this time, I've got other commitments in kind of other times as well. So you can really work out, okay, when do I actually have time to study? And then you'll notice on this example, if you can see, they've put in on the Tuesday afternoon, they've put study at home, but they've been specific about what study they're going to do. They're not just saying, right, I'm going to study the course now. They're being specific about what it is that they're doing. I'd also recommend making sure that it is measurable. You can tell you've achieved it, and that it is actually achievable based on the resources you have. And those resources aren't just, physical resources, but also mental as well. How much energy do you have at the time you've given yourself to study? Is there a better time that you could do it where you'd maybe have more energy? Is there something else you can do in this other slot that doesn't take as much energy? If you're doing it, trying to study at the end of a busy day or something. But give yourself a deadline as well by when you're going to try and get your tasks kind of done by. And that's the thing as well, is that, even if you are the most motivated person at the start of this course, like I say, things happen, life may get in the way, and that motivation can take a dip. I always say, motivation is very fickle and fleeting. Don't wait on it to get tasks started. Break down the tasks that you've got to do so they don't just seem like one big looming thing on the horizon, but they become a bit more manageable. For example, if you've got an essay to write, you can break that down into, okay, so when am I going to get the research done by? When am I going to do a plan for it? When am I going to write a first draft? When am I then going to have edited that draft by? Break it down into these kind of these steps so it doesn't seem quite so big. Always take regular breaks. I would always recommend, don't work for longer than 2 hours at a time without a significant break. Even within those 2 hours, give yourself kind of regular, kind of maybe micro breaks or something. There is a great study technique called the Pomodoro technique, which is really useful. And it is basically just you pick a task, you set a timer for however long your attention span will work for, work on that task, and when the timer goes off, you take a break. So that timer can be for half an hour, it can be for 5 minutes. Just get started on something. And then repeat, as often as you can. And as well, we don't want you planning 24/7 of your time. You need to give yourself just time off just to exist, and like I say, for these other things to happen. Do make time for other priorities, make time for the other fun things in your life as well, socializing, hobbies. Don't just work and study. Have those as your only things, have that time for the extra things as well. Having other people to work with is really important as well. Perhaps you can make friends on this course. Perhaps you've got other people that who are studying or doing other things at the same time. Work with others and get support and stuff when you need it. So like I say, my role as effective learning advisor, you can come to me and say, I'm struggling with making a plan to figure out what I've got to do. How am I going to get started? Where do I start with all of this stuff that I need to do? That's one of the things I can help with, breaking down tasks, figuring out a point where you can get started. If you're struggling with the reading, again, that's the thing I can help with as well, to help you with the reading strategies and stuff, and like I say, how to approach what you've got to do. And another thing with motivation, staying motivated is, remind yourself of what your end goal is. Remind yourself what it is your degree is going to get you at the end. Whatever that looks like for you, and have that somewhere. Also, just having general reminders around as well if there's things that you need to do, have post-its or motivational post-its even, or just notes about what it is that you've got to do and when can help just, like I say, keep track of things. And when it comes to, like I said, learning materials, whether that is reading materials or videos and stuff, we always say, be prepared. If you've been told you have to read something before if you have to do reading one or something before you watch video one or something, do that, do the work before and that preparation work as is required. And if you don't already, when you're reading something or watching videos and stuff, take notes, they'll be really useful for you to help maintain attention and keep track of everything. The image that we've got here is about the Cornell note-taking system. Don't know if you're familiar, but it's quite useful. You just block out 2/3 of a page for where you take your own notes, and then just keep a section clear for where you can go back over your notes and just add in any kind of keywords, anything you want to highlight, any questions you might have about that reading as well. Maybe there's something you need to clarify or look up in more detail. Maybe it's a word you're not familiar with. And then write your own summary at the end as well. So rather than just doing the passive point of taking notes, you're then doing something active with the information. It's really useful. Do keep using that material regularly as well, particularly if you do have exams. We've mentioned, using something little and often, studying little and often on a subject is better than trying to do it all in one go and then not using that again or not using it again for a while, just because of the way the brain works when it comes to learning something new. We have billions of neurons, trillions of synapses. When you learn something new patterns are formed among them. But the minute you stop using it, that is then kind of reabsorbed and redistributed for other things because the brain's trying to be efficient. So reusing and revisiting regularly makes it more important, flags up how important it is, and those pathways get strengthened instead. And as I say, course materials are a starting point. You will need to do your own research and read beyond. Take advantage of the support that Marion offers to do that further reading. There's a lot of reading strategies you can use, like speed reading strategies. There's and things to help you get familiarize yourself with the material before reading it in more detail. There's some guidance on that on the Skills Hub, but again, come and have a chat with me if it's something that you'd like to learn more about. And when it comes to your assignments, like I say, you need to demonstrate the spirit of inquiry, and that is you've gone and done your own research. You have, you want to learn. You've been inquisitive, and you've looked beyond. When you're writing your assignments, you need to demonstrate that you've built it on that existing knowledge. Every piece of academic work is built on what has gone before. And by citing and referencing those sources that you've read, that is where you kind of demonstrate, that's how you demonstrate that you show this kind of underpinning kind of foundation of knowledge. Your markers will also be looking to see that you've understood your purpose for this piece of work and your audience. So you have written, in a standard, essay style or report style, you know what it is you're trying to do with the work, and also who your audience is. And of course, with academic work, your audience may vary depending on what the instructions are. But you've also written for your lecturers who tend to be a bit of a silent audience. They might be pretending to be somebody else, but they're looking, like I say, to mark your work with a mark scheme, and they're checking that you have met the learning outcomes for the course. So if you're not sure, always refer to those kind of learning outcomes as well. The things that you're expected to know or be able to do at the end of the course. but also that, and you've understood then how to communicate that knowledge. Like say, you know, essay structure, you know, report writing structure, etc. And crucially, like I say, we've talked about academic integrity, and that is, you know, a huge part of what markers want from your work is your own voice. But your own voice that has been built built on, you know, the work, that kind of academic foundation. And we've got to demonstrate this critical thought. So you've not just repeated verbatim necessarily what other people have said, but you've put in that evaluation. You know, you say why something is good or why something is important, not just saying, you know, not just describing what something is. And again, the Skills Hub, we have a lot of resources about helping you with this. You know, you're not just getting thrown in and expected to know all of this. This is what our resources are kind of really here for. And like I say, when it comes to communicating as well with us, always be respectful, but like I say, don't be afraid. You know, you join in, get involved. You know, if you've got discussion boards and stuff or things that you have to contribute to, don't be afraid of writing in. And remember, like I say, what I said about my instructor, you know, I wasn't a bad driver, I was a learner driver. And that's what we're all here to do. And one of the best ways to learn is to talk it through. So do, like I say, just jump in and get involved.
Thank you so much, Rachel. That was absolutely wonderful. And I must say, I've got some great tips there myself on how to be an effective learner. I think my notes are going to significantly benefit from adopting that approach of blocking off the different parts of the page. So that was fantastic. Thank you so much. And, you know, one of the most important skills, everyone always asks, you know, what's the most important thing? How do I succeed on a degree program? And my response is always, it's about learning. The entire process is learning. If you think about developing learning as a skill, then doing any degree, whether it be this degree or another degree, is going to be, you know, you're going to succeed. You're going to be able to make a success of it. So thank you again, Rachel. If you do have any questions for Rachel, please feel free to pop them in the chat and we'll come back to those shortly. But now you've heard a bit more about the wider context of online learning and the skills that are going to help support you and help you to succeed on the online BSc. What I want to do now is bring that into something very practical and think about how the skills that you'll develop through online study translate directly into the capabilities that employers are looking for. And one of the strengths of studying online is that the skills you develop aren't just academic, they're directly transferable into the workplace. Employers increasingly value people who, as Rachel has talked about, manage their own learning. People who can communicate clearly in digital spaces and who can adapt to new technologies. And these are exactly the capabilities that you're going to build through online studying. Now, on this slide, you'll see a number of core skills that are key to your success as an online learner, some of which we've already talked about today, including self-management, digital communication, digital literacy. And it's these skills which you'll develop and strengthen throughout the course of your degree. So if we come to self-management, for example, as Rachel's already touched upon, this skill is key to success throughout your degree. You're going to be required to plan your studies around work, family, life. You're going to have to meet deadlines, and these are not always directly enforced. A lot of that will be self-managed by yourself, and you're going to need to break those larger tasks into more manageable chunks. So what does that mean to employers from a practical perspective? Well, it shows that you're someone who can manage your workload, prioritize effectively, and be trusted to deliver. Online learning proves that you can organize yourself and exercise professional autonomy, which is one of the most consistently requested employability skills across sectors. So it's not just going to help you succeed on this program, it's going to also help you succeed in your future career. Similarly with digital communication. Throughout this degree, you're going to need to write clearly in discussion boards. You're going to need to write clear and professional emails and make written assignment submissions. You'll also be expected to ask questions and collaborate with fellow learners within digital spaces. So why does that matter to employers? Well, again, it shows someone who can communicate professionally online, who can collaborate with other people across distances and different time zones, and someone who can build relationships through digital channels. Most workplaces now rely on digital communication, and you will be practicing this almost every week as you move through the BSc programme. Similarly with digital literacy, throughout the degree, you're going to have to navigate learning platforms and troubleshoot issues independently. Employers will see someone who can adapt quickly to new systems and learn how to use new digital tools, and someone who isn't intimidated by technology. Digital literacy really isn't optional in the modern business environment, and online study is going to really give you a head start with that. Similarly, critical thinking, another core skill, and that was picked up upon by Rachel as well. You're going to have to exercise this throughout your degree. You're going to be required to analyze readings, evaluate evidence, and be able to form arguments based on the evidence that you're reading about and gathering. And from an employer perspective, they'll see someone who is able to evaluate different options and consider risks appropriately and make informed business decisions. And critical thinking is one of the top skills that is consistently cited by employers as essential in a variety of different sectors and roles. And personally, I don't think it's just an employability skill. I think it's an essential life skill. Particularly in modern times, when a friend or family member brings up a fact that they got from TikTok, generally advisable to put your critical thinking hat on, take that with a pinch of salt. Really, critical thinking is not just for assignments, also for group chats. So a really important life skill that you're going to be exercising consistently as you move through the programme. Similarly, it's not all about communication skills and written skills and digital skills. Resilience and adaptability is another core skill that employers are increasingly expecting to see amongst their future recruits. And throughout the degree, you're going to need to navigate competing demands, self-motivate, and adjust when life gets in the way. Employers are going to see those skills. They're going to see someone who can adapt to those shifting priorities and stay steady under pressure. Sometimes things are going to get busy, and it's a core skill to be able to navigate that. Your ability to persist in online study is evidence of resilience. So another core employability trait that you'll develop as you move through the programme. And one of the, I think, underrated and perhaps my favourite skills, which I think, again, an essential life skill, is this idea of reflective practice and continuous professional development. Throughout your degree, you're going to be encouraged to reflect on feedback and identify areas for improvement. You will also have to act on that feedback and begin to adjust your approach over time. So why does that matter from an employment perspective? Well, employers are going to see someone who learns from their experience and is able to self-evaluate. Reflective practice is really the foundation of lifelong learning, which is a major asset in any career. When you can appreciate the value of learning and recognize that you can apply those skills in any area of your life, that's really the key to unlocking success. No one is born an expert financier, an expert business consultant, or an expert entrepreneur. Every single person who succeeded in those roles had to learn. So the benefit of, as we've already touched upon today, developing those effective learning skills and seeing learning as a journey, not one that begins and ends with a particular course or program, but which you carry with you throughout your professional career, is going to ensure success regardless of which avenue you choose to follow in life. So when you think about your online degree, don't just think about the modules or the assessments. Think about the professional identity that you're building. Every week you study, you're strengthening skills that employers actively look for. Skills that will support you not just in your first role, but throughout your entire career. You're not just learning about your subject, you're learning how to learn, how to adapt, and how to thrive in a digital world. And that's one of the most valuable things that you can bring into any workplace. So with that all said, I would like to thank Rachel for her contribution, for coming along and presenting today and telling us about some of the support services and resources available, and also some of the core skills that you're going to need to develop as you move through your program with Heriot-Watt. And also thank you to all of you for attending and for taking part in the discussion and really starting to think about that skill development piece as you move forward with the program. If you have any questions, please feel free to pop those in the chat, and we will go through those for you. Also, as I already mentioned, if there is something that comes to mind later on, or if you're revisiting this at a later point and you want to follow up on anything, please do pop your questions to this email address here, hwonlineapps@hw.ac.uk, and a member of the team will be able to get back to you. So thank you again. And yeah, welcome any questions you may have. But if you don't have any questions, that's absolutely not a problem. As I say, if something comes to mind later, do just get in touch with us and we'll be happy to follow up with you. And again, thank you very much for attending. If there is no questions for today, I very much look forward to speaking to you again soon, hopefully connecting in on the Programme Hub. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, wherever you may be watching from. Thank you so much.
It's great. Take care, everybody.